How's it going, my bakers? I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to the channel. Today we're making baguettes. Again, it was time to revisit them, so let's go to the kitchen and check it out. I've said this in my previous video and I'll say it again. Baguettes take a lot of practice to master, and I'm not even close to mastering them. In my opinion, this is probably one of the most difficult breads to get right. It relies a lot on handling and the correct equipment, but I'll show you exactly how I do it, and if you practice just a few times, your baguettes will be far better than mine. Saying that, I'm pretty happy with these. They have a nice shape, nice ears, a crispy crust, good color, and a decent crumb. And the most important part is that they taste amazing. Mostly thanks to the Poolish, which is the pre-ferment of choice here. So let's get to it and see what we need. I'm using a 13% protein white bread flour, water, yeast, and salt. There's not many ingredients, but we do need a few pieces of equipment. Of course, a bowl, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe, those are standard, but we do need something to slash the baguettes with. This is called the lame. It's a handle for a razor blade, and you could make your own out of a coffee stirrer. I'll talk about the importance of this a little bit later. Now, the final proofing of baguettes is normally done on a couche. A couche is a thick piece of linen, in between the folds of which baguettes are proofed, and it can also be used for rolls and larger loaves. Now, this is not a couche, it's just a tea towel, but it works the same way. A piece of non-stick paper for sliding baguettes in the oven with is also a handy thing to have. And I'm going to use my pizza peel for sliding the baguettes in the oven. But you can use a flat tray instead. You don't necessarily need a pizza peel, but if you have one, well, good for you. Now, for baguettes to rise and expand properly, there needs to be steam in the oven. So I'm going to preheat my cast iron skillet and then pour in half a cup of boiling water to create a cloud of steam. This will prevent the crust of the baguettes from drying out and setting too soon. Will ensure that they puff up nicely. If you don't have a cast iron skillet, use the thickest tray that you have. Just keep in mind that it may get ruined a little bit. Another way of moistening the baguettes is using a spray bottle, but you'll be fine without it too. Similarly to a pizza peel, there is a baguette peel. It's a piece of wood that you would use for moving the baguettes from the couche to the loading conveyor in the oven. I'm going to move the baguettes from the couche to the parchment paper and then to the pizza peel. I made it from 2 thick A4 papers, folded in half, and I taped them together to make them long enough for the baguette. Finally, we need a thick solid base to bake the baguettes on. I will use my pizza steel. You can also use a pizza stone or a heavy tray. So that's all the equipment out of the way. Let's start by making the Poolish. A Poolish is a pre-ferment with a hydration of 100%. So we're using part of the total water and part of the total flour in the recipe and adding a tiny pinch of yeast, which is 0.1 of a gram. There's an equal amount of flour and water. That's what makes it 100% hydration. A Poolish is the traditional pre-ferment used for baguettes. It gives them a nice texture and flavor and makes the crust extra crispy. Mix this until there's no more dry flour left. Then we cover it up and leave it to ferment for around 10 to 12 hours. It should almost triple in volume. I normally leave this overnight. A telltale sign of it being ready is when it starts collapsing in the middle. You can see that little line in there. If you're not ready to make your baguettes yet, pop this in the fridge for later. I'm going to make this right now. My kitchen's quite cool, so I'm going to use slightly warmer water than I normally do. For more information on temperature control, check out the Principles of Baking playlist. Now grab a large bowl, add the water, the yeast, add the salt, and then give it all a good mix. You want to hydrate the yeast and dissolve the salt completely. Once you have mixed it up well, add the Poolish. Then give it a quick mix again and add the remaining flour. Then we'll take our dough scraper, mix it to a dough, and tip it out on the table and start the kneading process. A quick note on the amount of yeast that I'm using here. It's half the amount that I used in my previous baguette video. The reason for it is because I wanted to let it ferment for longer. And if you want to halve the fermentation time, double the amount of yeast. Once your dough is mixed up, tip it out on the table and start kneading it. It's not very sticky, so the regular kneading method will do. What I like to do is press down and forwards with the heel of my right hand, and then using the fingers of my left hand I fold the piece of dough under the heel of my right hand, then turn it and repeat. Keep kneading this dough for 6 minutes in total. If it starts sticking to the table a little bit and sticking to your hands, use the scraper to scrape it up and then continue. Once you're finished, it should be nice and smooth and not too sticky at all. If you want to use a mixer instead, check out my mixer conversion video. But regardless of what you use, pop the dough into the bowl and take its temperature. It should be around 25 to 26 degrees Celsius. We'll cover this up and let it ferment for an hour and a half. It will take a while because we're using very little yeast here. Halfway through bulk fermentation, we'll give this dough a fold. Dust it lightly with flour, take it out of the bowl and pop it out on the table with the smooth side pointing down. Stretch the dough out, fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach where you started. Then flip it smooth side up again and tighten it against the table. And that's the fold done. With this fold, we are degassing the dough and increasing gluten tension, which will result in better rise as it bakes. Now place the dough back into the bowl, cover it up again, leave it to ferment for an hour and a half. And after a total of 3 hours bulk fermentation, we can divide this dough. And we're making 2 demi baguettes, which are basically half baguettes. If your oven is big enough, you can make 1 standard size baguette, but I'm sure most of us have smaller ovens at home. You should always weigh your dough before dividing it. Don't rely on the numbers in the recipe. As we mix it, knead it, fold it, we lose a little bit of dough at each step, and it will never be what it is on the paper. After dividing, we need to pre-shape. Flatten the dough, fold the 2 sides over in the middle, fold the top third down, then turn the dough around, then fold the bottom third the same way. The pre-shaping step ensures that both pieces of dough are uniform in shape. We're hiding all the cut-offs and making sure that everything's nice and smooth. It's important to not pre-shape too tightly. The tighter the dough is pre-shaped, the longer it will need to rest before final shaping. The longer it rests, the longer it will need to ferment. So if your dough is too tight, you may need to cut down on final proofing time. We'll give them a light dusting of flour, cover them up and let them rest for around 20 minutes. This resting stage lets the gluten relax and make it easier for us to shape the baguettes. And this might be the crucial part, so pay attention. Dust the dough very lightly with flour, then place it on the table with the smooth side down. Flatten it slightly. Now take the top third and fold it down into the middle. Press it in nicely. Now turn the dough around and repeat the same step. We are creating layers and tension. Now turn the dough around again. Now using your index finger and your thumb, fold the dough over whilst pushing it in with your thumb. And using the other hand, seal it up. So you want to fold, push, seal. Try to fold it down to the bottom edge and not in the middle, because you don't want to degas it as you seal it up. And again, once we've done one side, turn the dough around and repeat on the other side. Finally, you can dust your hands with flour lightly, just rub them against the table and roll the baguette out to the desired length. You can taper the ends or leave them round, it's totally up to you. Because if you got this far, it's already a major success. And always take note of where the seam is. Okay, so to recap, place the dough smooth side down, flatten it out, fold the top third down, turn around and repeat. Then turn it around again, then use the index finger and your thumb on one hand to fold the dough over and push it into itself at the same time, and use the heel of your other hand to seal it up. This will take some practice. And your first baguettes may be a little bit wonky, it's totally fine. Don't go in thinking that you'll be making perfect baguettes from the get-go. It's not gonna happen. But regardless of how they look, we need to place them on our couche. So take your towel, dust it lightly with flour, and place the baguette on it with the seam side pointing up. That's why it's important to note where the seam is. Now create a crease in the couche, and then place the next baguette on it. Finally make a crease on each side. This will make them keep their shape. You can simply cover the baguettes with a cloth. They're not going to dry out. I'll use my plastic wrap to show you how they rise. The final proof should take about 1 hour. During this time, preheat your oven to 250 degrees Celsius, fan off. And that's 480 Fahrenheit. Also preheat your baking steel or baking stone or whatever you're using, and preheat your steaming tray or cast iron skillet or whatever you're using. Everything has to be nice and hot. Give your baguettes a light dusting of flour, just makes them easier to handle. And now we are going to use our improvised baguette peel. By the way, you could just make this out of a single piece of cardboard. To flip the baguette on, simply pull the couche, place the peel next to the baguette, and then pull the cloth up and roll the baguette onto the peel. And it should be upside down now. You can place it on the baking paper and repeat with the other one. You can of course do this with your hands, but you would risk distorting the shape of the baguette. Now we have arrived at another crucial part, the scoring. I'm going to be using my lame. It's a special handle made for the razor blade, and it gives the razor blade a curved shape, which is important and gives us an advantage. As we cut the dough, that curve lifts up one side of the cut, and that's what gives it that particular look. Now you could make this handle out of a popsicle stick or a chopstick even. Scoring technique is also very important. You don't want to be cutting across from side to side. We need to try and cut down within a 1 inch wide space, overlapping each cut by about 1/3. Again, to master this, you'd need to cut hundreds of baguettes. I've only done this a few times, so I'm mostly only talking theory here. If you haven't cut it deep enough, you can correct it slightly. This is about what they should look like. If you have a spray bottle with water, use it. Home ovens are really bad at keeping steam in, so moistening the surface gives you an advantage. Okay, so these are ready for the oven. And at this point, you want to have half a cup of boiling water ready to go. As the baguettes go in the oven, right away we need to pour in the boiling water in our preheated pan. Please don't scald yourself, and don't get any water on the oven door glass, because it may shatter. As soon as you close the door, turn the temperature down to 210 degrees Celsius, which is 410 Fahrenheit. Now we'll bake these for around 22 minutes, or until they're golden brown all over. The reason for baking them in the oven that's cooling down is because they do need a high temperature bake, but I want to prevent the heating element from switching on halfway through the bake and burning the top of the baguette. And there you have it. I think I've given you enough details so you can make your own. And with some practice, you'll get better and better at it. And unlike in most of my recipes, the equipment here is crucial. You need a curved razor blade, you need lots of steam, and you need a hot solid base to bake them on. Otherwise they're not going to jump up and have that nice round shape. But don't let this discourage you. If you don't have a razor blade handle, use the alternatives I provided. If you don't have a cast iron skillet, use a tray. If you don't have a pizza steel, use a stone or a thick tray. So have you ever made baguettes before? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this one, click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.